I was sitting on my deck overlooking Cedar Lake when the first sharp, intrusive voice sliced through the peaceful morning air. A woman in a bright purple blazer was stomping up my gravel driveway, clipboard clutched like a weapon, and pointing at my 82-year-old grandfather as if he were some kind of criminal. "Excuse me, sir," she declared with the tone of someone who had clearly floated through life, without ever hearing the word no. "But this property is subject to HOA regulations, and I don't see your name listed on the approved occupancy roster." My grandfather, Emp Garrison, barely glanced up from the fishing lure he was tying. He'd been staying at my cabin for a month now, helping me repair the dock and sharing his secret trout recipes. The man had put in 45 years working for Pine Valley County, 20 of those as county administrator. Yet you'd never guess it from his faded flannel shirt and well-worn baseball cap. "Ma'am," he said in that slow, steady tone I'd seen him use on difficult people my entire life. "I'm just visiting my grandson. Is there a problem?" The woman's face twisted into what I could only classify as weaponized indignation. "A problem? Yes, there's a problem. I'm Margaret Sullivan, president of the Lakeside Estates HOA, and according to our bylaws, all long-term guests must be registered and approved by the board. You've been here for weeks without authorization." I stepped onto the deck, coffee mug in hand, trying to wrap my head around what I was seeing. I'd inherited the cabin from my late grandmother 6 months earlier. It sat on 5 acres at the edge of Cedar Lake, technically within Lakeside Estates boundaries, but older than the development by 3 full decades. I'd gotten a few annoying notices about my mailbox color and grass length before, but this was an entirely new level of intrusion. "Margaret," I said, keeping my voice level despite the irritation building in my chest. "This is my grandfather. He's been helping me with repairs." I didn't realize I needed permission to have a family visit. She snapped toward me, hair perfectly unmoving despite her sharp turn. "Mr. Patterson, our records indicate you are the sole owner of this property. Any resident staying longer than 14 consecutive days requires board approval. Your grandfather has been observed here for 23 days. "Observed?" Grandpa chuckled, placing his fishing gear aside. "You've been watching my cabin visits?" Margaret puffed her chest out proudly. "The HOA maintains strict oversight to preserve property values and community standards. We have documented evidence of unauthorized occupancy, including photographs of this gentleman engaging in various activities without proper permits." She flipped through her clipboard with the precision of someone who had rehearsed this showdown. "Fishing without a community lake permit, operating power tools during quiet hours, and most concerning, hosting what appears to be weekly poker games on Tuesday evenings with other unregistered individuals." I couldn't stop myself from laughing. Those poker games were just Grandpa and 3 retirees playing for spare change while discussing their medication schedules. But Margaret clearly wasn't operating with a sense of humor. "This is a formal notice of violation," she continued, pulling a manila envelope from her oversized purse. "Your grandfather has 72 hours to vacate the premises, or we will be forced to pursue legal action." Grandpa rose to his full height, his 6'2" frame still imposing despite the slight stoop. For the first time, I saw a flicker of the man who used to make county commissioners squirm during budget hearings. "Legal action," he repeated, his tone conversational but edged with steel. "And on what grounds, exactly?" Margaret consulted her papers with the smug certainty of someone who had memorized every subsection in the HOA handbook. Section 12. Paragraph 4 states, "The tall residents must be board approved." Section 18 prohibits commercial activities without a permit, and running a gambling operation certainly qualifies. Additionally, Section 23 requires approval for all property modifications. And we have photographic evidence of you constructing what appears to be an unauthorized deck extension. She was talking about the tiny 4x4-foot platform Grandpa helped me build to hold my telescope. But apparently, in Margaret's universe, that was a full-blown architectural offense. Furthermore, she pressed on, gaining momentum like a downhill freight train. "We have reports of excessive noise, including power tools, at 7 o'clock a.m., which violates our quiet hours ending at 8. There have been complaints about smoke from outdoor cooking. And don't get me started on the eyesore of that canoe rack you installed without architectural committee approval. My jaw tensed. That canoe rack had been there since my grandmother built the cabin in 1978, years before Lakeside Estates even existed. But arguing with Margaret would have been like arguing with a hurricane. Grandpa, meanwhile, seemed thoroughly entertained. He accepted the envelope with a polite nod, then did something that completely derailed her rehearsed performance. He smiled. "Miss Sullivan, I appreciate your commitment to community standards. Tell me, how long have you been HOA president?" Her chin lifted proudly. 3 years this November. I've increased compliance by 40% and property values have risen accordingly. Impressive, Grandpa said, though I caught the subtle sarcasm threading his words. And I assume you're well versed in County Ordinance 773B regarding grandfather clauses for pre-existing structures. Margaret's confident expression faltered. I'm familiar with all relevant regulations. Excellent. Then you're aware that properties built more than 20 years before an HOA's establishment maintain certain exemptions. But I'm sure someone as thorough as you has already verified that. I watched her cycle through multiple shades of red as she processed that. But she rebounded, fury, restoring her energy. Regardless of any supposed exemptions, the fact remains, you are not the property owner. You have no standing to occupy this residence without board approval. The 72-hour notice stands. She spun around and strode to her pristine white SUV, which proudly displayed an HOA president placard displayed proudly in the window. When she finally drove off, Grandpa and I stood in silence. "Well," he said, a small smile tugging at his mouth. "This should be interesting." I eyed him carefully. "Grandpa, what exactly are you planning?" He picked up his fishing rod and tested the line. "Nothing at all, son. But I think Margaret Sullivan is about to learn why it's important to know exactly who you're trying to evict." The next morning, I woke to find Grandpa already dressed in his best suit, the one he used to wear to county meetings. He was seated at the kitchen table, laptop open, legal documents spread out, scribbling notes on a yellow pad. "Going somewhere?" I asked, pouring coffee. "County Administrative Building," he replied without looking up. "Haven't been in a while. Thought I'd stop by and visit a few old friends." I knew that tone. Grandpa might have been retired for 5 years, but he still had deep roots in county government. He'd hired half of them, mentored most of them, and guided the rest through their careers. "Should I be worried?" I asked. He closed his laptop and gave my shoulder a reassuring pat. "Not at all. Just going to do a little research on our friend Margaret and the Lakeside Estates. HOA." While Grandpa was gone, I tried to get back to work. I'm a software developer and usually work from the cabin, but staying focused was impossible with all the movement outside. Margaret's white SUV passed by no fewer than 4 times that morning, slowing each time so she could scrutinize the property. On the 5th pass, she actually stopped and began taking photos. My phone buzzed. A text from my neighbor Tom. "The president is measuring your dock. Thought you should know." Threw on my jacket and headed toward the lake, where I found Margaret crouched with a tape measure, documenting what she apparently saw as grave violations of dock regulations. The rules clearly state docks may not extend more than 20 feet from shore, she declared the instant she noticed me approaching. "This monstrosity extends 24. This dock has been here since 1985, I said, keeping my frustration in check. "It was approved by the county when my grandmother built it." "County approval is irrelevant," Margaret sniffed. "HOA standards supersede all previous authorizations. You'll need to modify it to comply or face daily fines." She was so absorbed in her measuring crusade that she didn't notice Grandpa's old Ford pickup pulling into the driveway. But I did, and I saw he wasn't alone. 3 additional vehicles rolled in behind him, all marked with official county insignias. "Margaret," a woman's voice rang out. "Margaret Sullivan." Margaret straightened, confusion flickering across her face as a sharply dressed woman approached, followed by 2 men in county inspector uniforms and another man in a suit. "Yes?" Margaret's voice had noticeably softened. "I'm Patricia Wong, Director of County Code Enforcement," the woman said. "These are Inspectors Johnson and Martinez." And this is Robert Hayes from the county attorney's office. We need to discuss several concerns regarding the Lakeside Estates. HOA. Margaret's face drained of color. Concerns? What concerns? Patricia tapped her tablet. We've received multiple complaints about HOA overreach, harassment of property owners, and potential violations of county ordinances. Additionally, there are questions about the legitimacy of certain HOA financial expenditures and whether proper procedures were followed in recent board elections. This is ridiculous, Margaret sputtered. Who filed these complaints? Grandpa appeared at the top of the path, hands in his pockets, strolling forward as if he had just happened upon the scene. Oh, hello Patricia. Fancy running into you out here. Patricia's polished demeanor cracked slightly into a fond smile. Mr. Garrison, I should have known you'd be involved somehow. Margaret's eyes darted between them in disbelief. You know each other? Emp hired me 22 years ago, Patricia said casually. He was my mentor when I was just a junior inspector. Best supervisor I ever had. Inspector Johnson nodded. He taught me everything I know. Still reference his old manual. Martinez added. He officiated my wedding when he was acting county clerk. Even Hayes, the county attorney, cracked a small smile. He gave me my first job out of law school. Margaret looked as if she'd bitten into a lemon. This is a conflict of interest. You can't investigate complaints from your former boss. Actually, Hayes said calmly, Mr. Garrison didn't file any complaints. The complaints came from 17 different homeowners in Lakeside Estates. He simply supplied historical documentation when we requested it. Patricia pulled a thick folder from her bag. Also, Margaret, were you aware that when Lakeside Estates was incorporated, a specific exemption was written for the 5 pre-existing properties on the eastern shore? The Patterson cabin is explicitly excluded from HOA jurisdiction except in matters of health and safety. That's impossible, Margaret stammered. I've read every document. Apparently not, Patricia replied. The exemption is filed with the county, not the HOA. It's public record. Any competent HOA president would have checked county archives before enforcing regulations on exempt properties. Grandpa stepped in, his voice gentle but edged with gravitas. More troubling is what I found when I reviewed the HOA's financial records, also public. Margaret, would you like to explain the $40,000 beautification fund spent primarily on personal landscaping for board members? Margaret's complexion turned from ghost white to blazing red. Those were approved expenditures for community enhancement. A koi pond in your backyard counts as community enhancement? Inspector Johnson asked, checking his notes. Or the professional outdoor kitchen at the vice president's home? The county attorney stepped forward. Miss Sullivan, we'll need you to come with us to the county office to discuss these financial irregularities. We'll also be holding a special meeting of HOA homeowners to address governance issues. You can't do this. Margaret shrieked. I've done everything for this community. Property values are up. Compliance is at an all-time high. Compliance obtained through harassment and illegal enforcement isn't something to boast about, Patricia said coolly. We have documented evidence of you issuing fake violations, trespassing on private property, and using HOA funds for personal surveillance equipment. She turned toward me. Mr. Patterson, on behalf of the county, I apologize for any harassment you've endured. Your property is exempt from HOA oversight, and any fines or notices issued to you are null and void. Margaret stood frozen, her mouth opening and closing helplessly. Finally, she managed. This isn't over. I'll sue every one of you. I'll go to the state. Margaret, Grandpa said gently but firmly, I'd think very carefully about your next steps. The county attorney has enough evidence of financial misappropriation to pursue criminal charges. Right now, they're allowing you to cooperate. I suggest you take it. The fight drained out of her instantly. Her shoulders sagged, the bravado evaporating. She suddenly looked like what she truly was, a bitter woman who'd let a tiny bit of authority corrupt her completely. Fine, she whispered. What do you want me to do? Hayes handed her a document. First, sign this resignation from the HOA board effective immediately. Second, cooperate fully with the financial investigation. Third, provide written apologies to every homeowner you've harassed. including Mr. Patterson and Mr. Garrison. Margaret signed the papers with trembling hands. Watching her world collapse brought a mix of satisfaction and sympathy. She'd brought all of this upon herself, but witnessing someone unravel was never pleasant. Once the county officials left with Margaret in tow, Grandpa and I sat together on the deck in thoughtful silence. Eventually, had to ask, "How did you know about the financial stuff?" He grinned. "I didn't, not completely. But in my experience, people who abuse small amounts of power usually have dirt elsewhere too. I made a few calls, pointed them to the right places, and Patricia's team did the rest." "And the exemption?" I pressed. "Oh, that I knew for sure. I helped write it back in '95 when Lakeside Estates was being developed. Your grandmother insisted on it, worried something like this would happen." "Smart woman, your grandmother." I shook my head, amazed. "So you could have shut Margaret down from the start." "Could have," he agreed. "But sometimes people need to learn lessons the hard way, and she needed to be stopped before she bullied other homeowners who didn't have exemptions." Over the next few weeks, the full extent of Margaret's misconduct emerged. She'd embezzled nearly $60,000 in HOA funds, used HOA resources to spy on neighbors she disliked, and falsified board election results to keep her position. The county attorney offered her a plea deal, full restitution, 500 hours of community service, and 3 years of probation or face trial and possible jail time. She took the deal. The last time I saw Margaret was in the county courthouse when she was formally sentenced. She looked smaller somehow, her signature purple blazer replaced with a plain gray suit. When the judge read her sentence, including the $50,000 fine and restitution order, she simply nodded, her expression hollow. As the gavel fell, she turned, briefly met my eyes, then quickly looked away, shoulders hunched as she hurried out of the courtroom alongside her lawyer.